Hey, welcome back to Happy Little Note Trees. Today we are going to be playing around with recreating the look and feel of the Batman. Now, if you know anything about the Batman and its color grading process, you might have watched a video that I think, if I will remember to do it, put the link in the description of Dave Cole from Fotokem talking about the process of what they did to create the look and feel of Batman. Now, this is a fun little practice just because, hey, sometimes you want that look, sometimes you want it, but a lot about what they did and a lot about their process was they shot it digitally, they color graded it into as close of a really pristine, really sharp, high resolution version of what they wanted. And then they printed it or they filmed it with film, processed that into a digital intermediate print, and then color graded that some more to finally have the final print that went to theaters. So if you listen to them talk about it, he does some hand waving and not acknowledging all the secrets, but there is something to know. They had struggles with red and making red pop. And so, yeah, one of the things that we're going to just play around with is you don't have access to all that. You're never going to be able to, well, you might be able to. I don't know. Maybe someday that'd be a really big dream. But if you can't get out of the house and have a photo lab where you can develop film, look at it, have a film emulation built on the film styles that you're trying to build so that when you're color grading under it, you have a feel for where everything's going. It was a multi-layer step process of both digital and physical, where the physical distortions were done after the fact. So a lot of the color grading that's done, it's under the hood of the fact that they were going to actually process it on film. So you can think about a lot of the color grading, a lot of the shaping that was done on the Batman was done as a modification to the onset capture of the film stock. So we're going to dive right in. We're just chit-chatting right now, but looking at some shots that my note tree already set up. And then I picked two scenes to look at. The one is the graveyard scene. So this is a set photo, and this is the film production, the final shot. And we can see the big things that I'm looking for are what do things look like on my scopes compared to the still shot, where it's like, oh wow, a lot of saturation in that still shot. Narrow bands here and there with that shot. And then with this one, we have this set shot, which was not really a good behind the scenes photo, but you see that pull straight out to red. They shot this under sodium vapor lights. And then, yeah, you have that nice, where there is red in this image, it pops off pretty sharply. And then you have this shot. I've zoomed them in a little bit just to get rid of the blanking in the shots. But then you have this. This one is really unique in terms of what it tells us about the hue rotation. So if you look at the vector scope, what you see is that it is bending, it is twisting as we go off towards that skin tone line. All of a sudden, it starts to bend toward and rotate. It kind of kinks a little bit to yellow, which is not what we're getting here with these sodium vapor lights. And so we can think through, if we go to this is a behind the scene photo. You can see I've started to set things up. Had some issues figuring out what is the best, but I ended up choosing to run with OpenDRT. It works better in low light footage in terms of how it represents the reds. It also gives a lot of flexibility with where we're going to be going with detailing and shaping what you see in terms of the look, because it allows us to really pull and really twist. Oops. How that hue rotates in its purity as it gets out there. So, yeah, there's a couple other things, like we were looking at this for Shizzle. bringing in contrast, and a couple other things to shape it down is to get it to match somewhat, and just thinking through, all right, what kind of things do we need to introduce to create this look that feels from the Batman? Like if we were to go side by side, you can see the blacks hit at 4. There's like literally no blue in this image, just a very scant amount. Whereas I still have a lot of blue in the shaping of that. And a lot of this is because this still photo from the set isn't great, so the best thing to do was to go pull some stock footage of footage that, hey, this footage is your type of footage. It probably wasn't shot with this look in mind. It is, from what I can tell, shot under sodium vapor lights, so those nice street lights that make that nice little yellow glow. And we're going to head up to, so when we think about my node tree, this layer is really just shot balancing. So we're going to develop a look that kind of introduces some of the hue rotations and distortions that we'd want to see. And then this is where we'll deal with things like our exposure and matching and blending our exposure. But you can see, got lucky in my stock footage, back of a guy's legs, low level, street, rain, sodium vapor. Got this all set up. But yeah, so you can see like here, we can even start with some of the shot level balancing. We can see that our highlights are very, just in our exposure, we just bring this down. We were peaking at, if we look at this shot, we're peaking our reds around 50 at the highest point in these shots. A little bit more here where we got the street lamps in the shot, closer to 70. So we do have some lights. We don't have direct lighting here. The closest we get is that little bit on the post. So a happy medium would probably be right around here in terms of the level. The other thing, so we'll just zoom because I have that blanking. So we just crop that out. Our block level, we want to bring up just a skosh. It was sitting around 5 in those shots. And I'm going to bring some, get the depth back in, but we're working our lift and our gamma against each other to kind of shape that. That node is in linear, by the way. And then we have our color balance where we're going to just knock back. We've already started to kill off our blue, but we can do that a little bit more by just pushing our highlights out there. And we don't want to go too far. And then in our gamma, we're going to just bring that balance back between the green and the blue. And there, I would say we're, well, a lot of the way there, just balancing. This shot was lucky. I mean, a lot of the elements that we see in here are present, but there is still a lot of saturation. So we're going to hop over here, and this is where we're really building our look out. So we have our curve enabled. We're just going to bring up the contrast. Now we're going to have to go back to our shot level balancing and deal with some of the issues that this raises. But we'll bring up the black point here. This was the other look at the bottom, was just to get us in the ballpark with how we want to play with it. And then we got to remember, JP249 is what we had in the initial of our look dev session. If you watched my video on making a tree, this is where I started. We're actually going to switch this to OpenDRT and see how it handles in that low light rotation. Yeah, we got a lot more banding, a lot more tightness going on. And so maybe we'll just bring this pure gamma down and kind of push, maybe lower that contrast a little bit. So when they talked about the footage, they filmed it very sharp. They had very specific lenses that they used to try to get as sharp of a resolution as possible. They graded it as sharp as possible before they printed it. or filmed it on film stock, and so then they had a capture stock negative that went to a intermediate stock, then went to the final print stock, and so they were concerned they were going to lose sharpness and resolution through all those steps. And so the fact that this looks very sharp compared to this isn't really a concern, because you're going to be, unless you're doing that whole print emulation on top of this, that's where you're going to start to lose your sharpness. Now we can introduce scatter here. One of the things, if you were trying to just do it all in Resolve with nothing later, just blast how that scatter works, because that's how you're going to get some of the bloom that came through the film emulation as the dye density layers rolled off a little bit quicker than they were anticipating. So looking at this, we might tweak. So our roll off, you can see we're really pushing that kink out, kind of bringing in this tight with this purity boost. We're just introducing, we really want it to be a nice roll to the left. And we're just adjusting how that hue rotates out there. So we can go, one of the things we can do is we want to think about the diagnostics is we can bring in our good friend chips. So it's DCTL from Thatcher Freeman. Just turn this off for now. I guess, oops. I don't need to turn that off for now. I just need to put this where I want it, which is over here. And reconnect all this, because I switch this to log. We're going to switch this to a 6. I should really set this up for you guys as a saturation can stay the same. Number of columns doesn't matter. Spherical, really, and then get that gray ramp out there. HSV. So now we got our 6 vectors that we can look at and kind of see how our hues are rotating directly. And yeah, we have a nice good kink going out, and a lot of this is going to be change the node label to OpenDRT, just so we remember how that red is rotating to yellow, because we can rotate it the other way as well as it gets. So this is a lot of what's happening as the color gets brighter. Which way are we rotating our hues? And this is going to come in handy for our next shot, but you can see greens aren't really shifting too much around as things get pure and rotating back. So this is Christmas, and what do we have here? We can kind of see what's going on in our scopes with our hues. Doing scatter off, it's a lot sharper an image. And normally, if we were working with OpenDRT, if we just hit reset up here, this is what OpenDRT usually does in linear, and this is what it normally does as a just out of the gate hue rotation. But we're going to undo that, and you can see how we've shaped it by pushing these things and sliders around to really tweak how those hues rotate. And just working towards building that lookout. And so bring down the white point a little bit. It wasn't very contrasting image. They didn't really, after all was said and done, the image wasn't super contrasty. And it had a bit of a bleach bypass to it. And this is just going by looks, going by feel. And we can come down here, we'll enable hue. We might rotate. See how this tweaks down in there. And maybe fiddle with our yellow and get it to really jump out. Push towards red. And then we'll come back and we're going to turn that off and just see kind of what we did. We're a little ruddy, I would say, compared to, and that might be okay. You can see we have that kink. We have a lot of saturation going on there. We don't have as much density, so we might want to just jump in. I'm trying to do a lot of some contour because I think at the end of the day, one of the things I can do is pop a lot of contour out or create a lot of this. So if we just crank, push up density a little bit. Our low end, we want to tweak our saturation levels a little bit. This is one of the coolest sat curves. So we can tweak how our low end and our high end shapes on the sat curve. So the high end probably is slowly burning off. Feels low end. Tweak this in the mid-tones a little bit. And maybe dial this back a little bit, rotate it. You can see if we go too far, it starts to lose that bend in it. If we rotate that hue, and maybe if we just drop. This is luminosity. This is a lume mask, so here's a really cool thing you can do with this hue rotation is be sneaky about it. So if we show the hue curve, that's what we got going on. We can also put in highlight mode, and you can see as things get brighter, that hue rotation towards red isn't as prevalent, and so we can change the mask so our brightness is there. And what's happening is, as we dial this lume mask back, we're really just tweaking how effective it is. You can see on the scopes that we're right around here is where we're still getting that nice bend. We go too far, it doesn't happen at all. And so we're just trying to find that pivot point for now we can push our reds in the low more towards red and still get that roll off and break towards yellow. We can pull, make it, fight it, and get it sharper. And so there we're starting to get close to what we see in this image that has that little chunker change down in that foot. Of just shaping that look. And we can come back and we'll probably have to make a couple tweaks here. And bring up our blacks a little bit more. This is just shot balancing again. Underneath the look that we established. And that gets us part of the way there. So you can see, so click through these shots. There's that kink that is going, and what we still have is a lot of saturation. Maybe we can just trim that a little bit. But you have to remember what we're talking about is that that saturation was something that they said they lost in the film printing side of things. If we jump to this other shot, we have this. Well, we can work on this. We can see how this applies to this by just going. This is not done with sodium vapor, so if you were redoing it, if we just applied this grade, over, you'd be like, oh, that's not right. So our grade up at the top is the same. This is different. Let's just make sure. I can't remember. I saved it off. The footage was, nope, it was Black Magic. And so this, because it wasn't shot under sodium vapor lights, quite a different look, but we can get there. We just need to remember the principles of getting our look pushed up here, get our blacks recentered. So we had copy pasted the grade from a sodium vapor shot over, and we're just tweaking our wheels there just slightly. And now we're in a color balance. Just kind of push. That's going green. Let's see down here. We're just pushing a high end as hard as we can, which is probably more than anyone would normally ever do. And we're just gonna steer this towards sodium vapor. And you can see on the vector scope that as we do that, that our look that we're built under is shaping how our high end is working. And we cranked on this pretty hard. That is a little ruddy. Perhaps too much. I'll come back and we can bring down how bright it is. Kick it up a notch. Maybe steer a little bit here. And you might want to. It's dangerous switching to offset. And working the offset wheel in Gamma Linear. You can get, but we're really doing very fine tuned white balance adjustment to get that feel looking right. Anyways, that isn't bad. Like if we were to thumb through these, they're in the same vein. What we don't have is the film emulation. That's going to get all the distortions of the bleach, the lack of sharpness, and the other distortions. But in terms of color, we're getting there. We're getting there. So let's jump over to this shot. This was another one, and we can see how our look that we were working in the other one is, if we're going to have to make any tweaks, because this is a completely different shot. Maybe we have to do it where it's completely on its own. So this is dark. If we zoom in on the spectroscope, there's like nothing going on. We do have a launch like we've seen of where those lights are up at the top going off towards the yellow orange. So my gut wants to say that the rotation curves that we have are going to be the same. And so we're just going to go over here and find a shot that kind of matches this, because you can work on here. The issue is you start to run into is what was it shot in? What does it conform to? You can learn some things as you start to shape it, like exposure levels and matching. You're going to get banding issues and various other aspects depending on how great the resolution of this behind the scenes photo is. But you can see I tweak things like yellow density. I'm getting close. It still feels way more saturated than it should. And this isn't really necessarily a look that you would build on a behind the scenes photo that would get you where you want to be. But you can get awfully close. It's this where we actually have footage that we understand and can work with, that we can come up here and say, hey, we built this look in this shot. Light active layer. How does it work if we just let that ride and then do our shot level balancing underneath it? And so you can see when we look at here, our high end, our high-end clouds are at 40, and the bulk of our green footage is down in the weeds, you could say, the proverbial weeds. So we'll just bring our high end down to 40-ish, peaking around there. Bring our gamma down, bring up our lift a little. So now we're starting to get there just with shot balancing and our look and how our hue rotations were the same. And we might just push our color balance down towards green a little bit. And you can see our saturation on our vector scope died off the second we started taking the light away. We want to be very gentle. We're working in linear. Very gentle to just dial this in, and we can go back and forth with this shot. Kind of see how it looks on the scopes. There's a bit more saturation in the greens. We can kind of bring that back up. And that's where in our look, we kind of have, outside of the contour, have these options where I can tweak the saturation of like the yellow. Kind of give a little bit more boost to the look, to the shot after the look dev that was done in contour. Kind of give that green a little bit more runway. And now if we were to compare these two, we're getting closer. We're definitely in the ballpark. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts? If Dave Cole ever sees this video, which he probably won't, he's a busy man over at Fotokem. Like, subscribe, do all those YouTube things, but getting close is the name of the game because it was a very complex process to get to this point. And if we want to go down the rabbit hole of introducing grain and other emulation on top of this, because that's what he described as being an extremely sharp look that they did all the way up until they did the film emulation, that it was extremely sharp. And they kept it as high resolution as possible. So I would assume if you watched the non-filmic version of the Batman, it might look as sharp as this. But yeah, if you like, subscribe, do all those other YouTube things. We'll share this video around, and I might do a follow-up where we introduce some of those filmic emulations on top of this look that we built. And that was kind of modeled after the same feel. And remember, we kind of went from, like we just turn off some of this stuff. You can see we turn that off. Like this is what we started with for this shot. Like not a whole lot going on here. That's not sodium vapor. We're still able to spin it around and get around to the ballpark of getting it giving it that sodium vapor feel, fixing the footage to fit within the vein of what we're doing. Anyways, like, subscribe, do all those other things, and I'll consider doing a follow-up where introducing things like grain, halation, bloom, and other distortions that come from like bleach bypass and things like that, and how I would approach that. So, till then, it's been fun.